Hi, this is Professor Lusheen with the University of Wisconsin-Whitewater, providing a tutorial or a tour of the OSHA website for my students and because others have asked about it. As you can see on the screen, we've got the homepage to the OSHA website located at www.osha.gov. I'm going to be going through the tabs primarily for this tour, for this tutorial, but I'm going to cover some other important things as well. On the screen right now, I'm going to go to the headlines. We've got 5 headlines from OSHA. First is the record keeping standard, which changed last year. Second is we've got a week of safe and sound coming up soon. It's summertime. We've got emergency weather or bad weather, and so they want you to be prepared for it. Every summer they have a special promotion on the protection of young workers working over the summer. They tend to get hurt more often than others. And then finally, how to report if you have a fatality or severe injury. So if you do have a fatality in your workplace or one person is hospitalized due to an accident, that means admitted to the hospital, or if there's an amputation, or if there's a loss of eye, you have to contact OSHA. So for fatality, it's 8 hours. It's 24 hours for the other 3 conditions I just mentioned. You can call the 800 OSHA number here. You can find your local area office and contact them directly, or you can report it through this link here. And there's other links throughout the website, which is why I like the OSHA website so much. There's so many ways to get to the end result. Before I begin, or I've already begun, but at this point I want to point out that the way that safety should be practiced, OSHA is actually the minimum, the foundation. You should be going above and beyond what you find here, but they've actually extended themselves and provided beyond compliance or beyond regulation recommendations for safety. And so use the regulations as a basis, as a minimum, and then build from there. Whenever you get onto not log in, but whenever you go to the OSHA website, they do ask you to join OSHA Takes. It's their e-newsletter. They've got news things here in the middle, Twitter, blog. Up here, they've got reports of recent fatalities. If you're a worker and you want to file a complaint, here's a YouTube video link so you can learn to do that. And then down here, they've got their high penalty enforcement cases by state. I'll be investigating that later when we talk about data. So for my students, you're going to probably want to look up information about OSHA because that's something I'm asking you to do. Here's a link to the OSHA Act, which we'll go to when we talk about regulations. And the organization, the organizational chart, as you'll see right now, the Assistant Secretary of OSHA position is vacant, along with the other 2 or 3 below that. So hopefully we'll find out soon who that is. Doesn't mean they're not enforcing OSHA regulations, just means they haven't assigned one yet. There's information about regional and state and local. Let's talk about that real briefly. Here's a layout here, and you see with an asterisk, that means it's a state plan. Non-asterisk means it's a federal plan state. You can click on here to get all of the consultation offices throughout the U.S. That is when you're asking OSHA to come in and do a review of something and it's not compliance, it's consultation, but you still have to fix it. The state plan states, there's information about it. There's about 26 or 28? 26 states plus Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands. That's our state programs. As far as regions go, I'm going to talk about Wisconsin and Region 5 because that's my region. It's located in Chicago. There's the contact information. And for Wisconsin, we have 4 area offices, as you can see here. You can see where their jurisdictions are by county. All the contact information, again, the Wisconsin consultation program. So that's stuff my students need to know. And wherever you're located, you can find it here. Back to the About OSHA. Other than information regarding history and things like that, that's about all you need. The next tab over is workers. So if you're a worker and you want to know what your rights are, if you want to file a complaint, you want to know what your whistleblower protections are, that's when your employer discriminates against you for bringing up an OSHA issue or filing a complaint and then they try to discriminate, you've got rights. There's information about the training cards. There's a 10-hour and 30-hour, excuse me. I just want to look quickly at the statistics, but all the information's here. If you're interested or you want your workers to be trained, fiscal year 16 was the all-time high. That's great. As far as the type of trainings by classification, construction 10-hour is the most common. It's been like that for a long time. General industry is 10. 10-hour is more for the worker. 30-hour tends to be more for a supervisor. That's my opinion, but I think it's pretty standard. And then as far as other information, as you can see, there's been some online offerings now, and they're just breaking it down. That's been going up exponentially. See, it's very small percent there, about 30% in fiscal year 16. Maybe that's driving up the totals. I don't know. If you're an employer, you can find information here to help you out. Don't be afraid of OSHA. You can call their office. You can ask for an OSHA consultant to come in. You should be using these resources, again, as a minimum or basic safety program development. Small business resources, cooperative programs, all this other stuff. To report a fatality, again, another link to it, changes in the record keeping, and I've got a webinar on that stuff also posted on YouTube. Safety health program recommendations, and I'll get to that later. And let's get to the poster. So when I was a compliance officer in Minnesota back in the 90s, we called this the $1,000 poster. Every compliance investigation I did, I looked for this. It's typically posted in the break room or on the bulletin board that's dedicated to safety. You can get it for free here. A lot of companies, what they do is they get a laminated poster from their work comp carrier that on one side has the work comp for their state, the other side has the OSHA information. But this is required at every workplace. Again, it used to be $1,000, probably more now, which I'll talk about later as well. Regulation. So if you want to look something up, you can find it here. We've got standard interpretation. This is something that I really get into when people call or email me with questions, because likely their particular safety and health situation doesn't meet the letter of the law, and so they want to know how they can apply it. And likely someone has asked a question similar to it, and OSHA writes back and they publish all their interpretations here. Training requirements by standard, there's quite a few. There's a regulatory agenda with the current administration. The expectation is that there will be minimal regulatory changes in the next 4 years, and likely there may be some repeal of some regulations, and then whatever's open for comment. As far as the regulations, what that looks like, got it broken down by area. I'm going to go all just so I can show you everything. So it's got a lot of stuff that people may not need. We've got the primary ones that I tend to deal with would be 1903, 1904, which is record keeping, 1910 general industry, and 1926 construction. I think at this point, what I want to do is quickly visit the original act itself, the OSHA Act of 1970, signed into law by President Nixon, right around December 29th or 30th of 1970. On April 28th of 1971, OSHA became a thing, was born, if you will, and now we acknowledge that day as Worker Memorial Day, so April 28th of every year. Here's the OSHA Act, formerly called the Williams-Steiger Act. And there are 34 sections, I believe. This is all written in legalese, not easy to follow. The one section that is most popular, that people refer to, is the General Duty Clause. They've got a link up here, but I'm going to go straight into it. So it's Section 5A1. So see, so this is Section 5A1, which clearly states each employer shall furnish to each of his or her employees employment and a place of employment free from recognized hazards that are causing or likely to cause death or serious physical harm to his or her employees. So you can actually look up specifically where investigations or compliance investigations have resulted in general duty citations. This is something that compliance officers use when they document an exposure that definitely could result in death or serious physical harm to the worker, and there is no specific standard that covers it. One that is primarily used for is ergonomic or overexertion type injuries or musculoskeletal injuries. There's no specific standard relating to it. There was for a very short time at the end of the Clinton administration, but it was repealed within the first 3 to 4 months of the George W. Bush administration. And so general duty is used for that. It's used in other places too. You can look at the list. There you go. Enforcement, you can see what sort of enforcement programs there are. I just want to pay a little bit of attention to the national emphasis programs because there are several different types of inspections, or the reason or scope of an inspection. One of them is planned program inspections. These planned program inspections are specific to national and local emphasis program areas. So if you're a company and you do work either in an industry that's identified or one of these hazardous issues or topics, you're more than likely to be chosen via computer randomly for a compliance inspection, a planned program inspection. Of course, the complement of those are, fatality, catastrophe, complaints, referrals, follow-ups. There's probably one I'm forgetting. Imminent danger, I believe, is another. And then there's also the local emphasis programs. My students are required to look in here under Region 5. And what's most specific to Wisconsin, and it's basically LEP9, which is the dairy farms. If there was a brewery one, we'd also be high on the list. Little humor, not much. Under topics, and for the people who are just starting to get to know the safety field, just starting to get to know the standards, and students, I know I go to the regulations right away to look things up because I'm familiar with it. I'm in there. But they also have great topic pages, safety and health topic pages, e-tools, all the stuff you see here will have links to the regulations. But what they do is they provide it more in a user-friendly format. So you can get more background information or application, links to examples, and then to the regulations. And so I would start with topics if you're new and then move on to the regulations. Here's publications. There's great publications here. You know, if you're out practicing and you need some information to follow in order to build a program or understand a specific issue at your workplace, good place to start. Now, data and statistics. I'm just going to go to some commonly used statistics. So as you can see, the budget didn't change much for those 2 fiscal years. They're asking for more. I don't think they'll get it. Unfortunately, what I saw is on the chopping block right now is the Susan Harwood grants, which is, I feel real bad about this because this program has provided grant money to organizations to provide education and training to high risk and special populations, and they've done a fantastic job. As the funding is right now, what they say is there's enough OSHA inspectors or compliance officers to visit each workplace once every 100 years, which is a constantly moving endpoint because we have new companies being created all the time. And so it's unlikely every workplace would ever get inspected. And as you reduce funding, there's less compliance officers. How do we improve worker safety and health in the United States? Well, secondarily, it's through education and training. And now it looks like one of our most successful grant programs for that is going to be cut. So I'm upset by that. I'm sorry. That's just my opinion. So here's a little bit more information. They got the most frequently cited standards. Some people say, I guess it's interesting that this stuff comes up. Now, the way I view this as a former compliance officer is that there are certain standards that are just very easy to observe and document. And I think that's how this list is created. But along those same lines, people who are out practicing should realize this is stuff you can easily observe and try and correct. So as it were, it's good information. It doesn't change much year after year. Other data we can look at. Let's look at the high penalties by state. Again, these are, I think this is a new method that OSHA is using. One, they're trying to promote or publish, I don't want to say promote, they're trying to make people more aware of cases that had the initial penalties above $40,000. These are the more severe, these are outliers. It's a shaming approach. I think they're using a similar mindset when it comes to having larger companies submit their 300A information this year by July 1st. And then next year, there's going to be additional information and they're going to publish that. I don't fully agree with that, but as a researcher and scientist, I can't wait to get my hands on that data. So in Wisconsin, a highly publicized case was Ashley Furniture. I think it opened in like 2014. I believe it's still open. And what I like to do when I look at these cases, and you can look up your individual organizations from that link. Not that link, but I'll show you in a second. But you can see there's all kinds of great information about the case, when it was started, why it was started, what it did, initial and current penalties, because this has gone through a formal settlement. And then we can look and see by citation number, what gravity it had, what level it had. See, we got a 5A1, so these were 2 general duty clause. We have a 1910-147, which is lockout tagout. 151C is eyewash. 212, 213, 219 are machine guarding, so it's 216. The 300s are the electricals. We're back down to lockout tagout with 147. More machine guarding, more lockout tagout. And you can see all this information. So each inspection that's been posted, you can get information on, which I think is a good thing. It's nice to look that stuff up. So under data, you can inspect by establishment. Now you may have to use different variances of your company name or the company name you're interested in, simply because it's entered in differently. And you can narrow it down to state and office just to make sure it's correct, or search totally over a time period. And there's all this great search stuff. So good stuff here. And then there's information on training. They have good training information, good videos. They're interesting. I use them in classes. You can go to the YouTube and you can find additional ones like WorkSafe BC, which is a Canadian channel, and there's all just good stuff. And here's the hardwood grants that unfortunately sound like they're going away. You could also look up the OSHA training institutes. They're located throughout the U.S. They provide excellent training as well. The last things I want to point out, and I believe under regulations for directives, there's 3 or 4 things that I'd like to point out. Now you can find them here, but I'm going to try to show you an easier way because these are compliance, administration, and technical directives. CPL is a compliance directive, and 0200160, or you could just search Field Operations Manual, is an excellent tool if you're becoming a little bit more experienced in the safety field. This takes the standards like the 1903 and the OSHA Act and makes it more practical. It's got all the reasons. This is what the compliance officers have to follow. This is their standard operating procedures. Everything's here. And people ask, how do they figure out penalties? How do they do citations? How do they plan out inspections? Well, this is how they do it. Now, if I go to page, I have to go off the top of my head. I think it's 108. There it is. It's got penalties. So earlier last year, the maximum serious penalty was $7,000. It's now $12,471. The max for willful or repeat used to be $70,000. Now it's $124,709. Now, OSHA spent a lot of time and energy publicizing this. So everybody knew that they were going to change. They provided a lot of evidence why. It hadn't changed in a super long time. And now what they did is they brought it up to what inflation costs increases or whatever it might be. So it's definitely more. Now, how do they arrive at ultimately these amounts? Well, there's the gravity of the violation, which is really a risk-based calculation of exposure and severity. And then there are penalty reductions, percentages by size of company, good faith, which is basically their safety program, and history of violations with OSHA. And as we scroll down, I mean, a lot of people don't know where to find this stuff. It's right here, page 108 to like 115 of the Field Operations Manual. Now you know where it is. So they give some examples and the breakdowns as you see here as I'm scrolling by. And what I'm trying to get to is the penalty reductions, something that people don't know a lot about. So if you were to add all these up, it is to 105. However, what they're trying to do is still provide some decent reductions for companies that have less than 10 for people who have, well, less than 10 can get up to 70%. So it's 10% for history, 25 for the program, and for the size. Did I go by? Nope. So it gives you a breakdown here on what all this stuff means. If you're interested, here's the size reduction. So 10 or less, 70, 11 to 25, 60. And so that's why I could go up to 105. And so it's possible. Small company with a great safety program and no history, even with citations that are non-willful, non-repeat, it looks like you could get away with possibly not having to pay anything for penalties. It's possible, unless they have a minimum $100 or $200, whatever it might be. The second thing I want to show you, so that was the Field Operations Manual. The second one is Administrative Directive 0400002. This is, you had to do this to me. It just worked 2 minutes ago. 0400. I might have typed it in wrong because I'm looking at many things at once. This is the OSHA Safety and Health Management System. This is good. This is going beyond the minimum. This is going beyond compliance. And this is a great manual. It's fairly new. Came out in October of 2016. I think that was the update. This is really good stuff. Especially if you're a consultant and you're doing like mock OSHA audits. You start with the Field Operations Manual and then how to improve things, how to go above and beyond and really show savings in your safety program. You get this right here, ADM 0400002. This is a great thing. I'm going to be sharing this with my students as well. The next one is the OSHA Technical, which is the Technical Directive 01. Now this is not, I believe, in PDF. The OSHA Tech Manual. This is more for the health standards. When I was a compliance officer, we pulled a lot of information from Salt Lake City. Everything was Salt Lake City, the TDMs, or the TEDs, excuse me. It's all about sampling and how to handle the samples, how to interpret it, how to determine exposure. I also use the NIOSH website and the NIOSH Pocket Guide, but you can go to the ACGIH or AIHA. They all have great IH-related information, but I want to show you this. The last thing I want to show you, and this is a recent discovery of mine, is recommended practices for safety and health programs. It's just a 40-page document, and it's kind of a condensed version of the ADM 040002. Oh, this one's for construction. Ah, okay. So I must have hit a wrong thing. There's for construction, and then there's just for business. So this is really cool. And I think it gets more into the cost savings involved. Yeah, this one's 40 pages. So they have one for general industry. They have one for construction. And it just gets into, how to build a safety management system versus just a program and the cost savings. And this is really cool stuff. I'm so glad that OSHA has moved beyond just compliance, moved just beyond the regulations. And they're really thinking about the programs involving people and education, making decisions, business decisions versus just avoiding the citations and penalties. So I really thank you for your time. I hope this little tour has helped. Please contact me if you have any questions. Thank you.